Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast with Jay Gordon Duncan. And if you're wondering why the J, the answer is, I'm not a bagpipe player. And if that joke doesn't make any sense, I encourage you to check out episode 0, where I explain that joke, as well as the purpose of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast, where we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back to the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast. My name is Gordon Duncan, and here we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. Again, thank you. I will never grow tired of thanking you for the increased audience listening and watching. There's more of you guys watching these on Facebook. You're sharing these episodes. Thank you. And again, it's a solo round. We had some great guests, and we've got more lined up. We really do. In fact, I spoke to 2 new people coming on today. I expect them to come up on very, very soon. We've got some great wisdom about sales, about nonprofits, and I've even got a couple more celebrities out there I'm chasing. It'll happen. But guys, thank you. These first 10 or so episodes under the new format have been a blast for me. And again, I try to mix it up as a combination of interviews and solo rounds. I have enjoyed greatly everyone who's been on the show. More great folks coming. But it's important also, I've got things that I want to contribute via my sales, coaching, and anything along those lines. So I want to share them with you. And today, I posted, where was it? I posted a reel on Instagram and on Facebook, and I did a TikTok for it later on. I varied it. I didn't do them all at the same time, but I did post one, and it got a big response, and I want to come back and speak to it in a greater detail. So, in that reel, I did it I was sitting in a coffee shop. I stepped into a hotel lobby, found a quiet place, and I recorded it. And I was talking about the fear of failure. Now, the fear of failure is incredibly common. I understand it. I have gone through it. I have it in moments. But the fear of failure often keeps us from taking risks. A fear of failure keeps us from trying new things. And a fear of failure often causes us to perform at less than our best. And I wanted to talk about that because I know that when I sit around a table with business people here in town, that fear of failure is very common. Imposter syndrome is common. I'm going to talk about that in a later episode. Imposter syndrome is when you're sitting in a crowded group of people and you go, I don't belong here, that kind of thing. Or just jealousy. Those things often inhibit our interactions and our growth. They really do. But fear of failure is a great one. Okay, and I was just thinking about it because I was about to give a talk that week. I was talking to about 10 or 12 folks about our Capitalize Your Best coaching program. And fear of failure was a topic I wanted to bring up within the talk for about 30 seconds. But this is what I had to say, and I want to expand on it. Fear of failure is living in a future trauma that hasn't happened yet. Fear of failure is living in a future trauma that hasn't happened yet. In fear of failure, what we do is we look at the scenario that we could or might be involved in, right? And then fear of failure is like, oh no, it's going to go bad. What's going to happen? It's going to go bad. And we create a future trauma that has not happened yet. So fear of failure, nothing has happened yet. Even if you've experienced a great deal of trauma in your life, I understand that, and a great deal of failure in your life, I understand that. But fear of failure is creating a future trauma and living in it. Like, oh no, if I do that, I might fail, or I might fail. And then we live and experience the emotions of something that hasn't happened yet. And guys, our brain, I've talked about this before, our brain doesn't know the difference between a fear and a memory. It really doesn't. You're replaying scenarios. You're replaying scenarios that have or haven't happened yet. So when you have a memory, you're replaying a scenario of something that's happened. But when you live in a future reality, you're living in that reality. And so your brain doesn't know the difference between the two. And so what happens is when we live in fear of failure, we're creating a future trauma and walking through it. And guys, I understand it. Amy and I were talking about this the other day. 4 different times in our lives, we've hit Control-Alt-Delete. And what I mean by that, does anyone even do that anymore? 4 different times in our lives, we have completely restarted. I mean, from zero. In 2003, I was managing my eye doctor's office, and I was in seminary part-time. And I quit the eye doctor's office to go to seminary full-time, and I started my first business. And we went from, in 2003, $50,000 a year, which was a really good salary then and now. And that next year we made $17,000. Like, it was just a precipitous drop. But we did it because I wanted to get my master's degree and wanted to go into ministry, and I started a new business. And there was tons of like, how's this going to go in 03, right? Then in 05, I graduated from seminary, and we went out and planted a church, and we did what's called a scratch plant, which means you started from scratch. You don't have any people, and you just start from zero. And it was the same kind of thing, because all we had at that point in time was my consulting business, which was small, and we had to go somewhere and start from zero. Well, in 2013, we moved to Fredericksburg to start another church. In the first 2 months of that, we did not have a salary whatsoever from the church. And so there was no money given from anyone else. And so I lived off of consulting with eye doctors and any donations we raised. Then in 2020, we went from being a pastor and part-time marketing to full-time marketing. And so what happened at that point in time is we went from like 1 1/4 salary to like a 50% salary. Like, there was a drop, and we had to do that, start over again. So 4 different times we have started all over again, where you had to go backwards to go forwards. Now, I'm not saying that to say I have perfected this. I have not. But that's the history of what we walked through, right? And there's fear in every one of those. Of course there is. Especially the one where we moved up here. And we moved to Fredericksburg, and my parents had passed, and I was starting to have seizures, and the money that was just not there. There were promises, but it wasn't there, and we just started all over again. And again, 2020, the big leap, right? That this thing I've kind of done on the side is now going to be what I do. And in those scenarios, the fear is what's going to happen, right? And sometimes when you face that worst case scenario, you got to go look at it and decide, I can live through it, right? What's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario, if Amy and I are united, worst case scenario is bankruptcy. People survive it, right? You lose some status. You might be embarrassed. You know, I knew that if I knew I had my family with me, I'd be okay. Because worst case scenario is I'd be alone, right? But we were united in the choice. We made the decision together. If you got a big leap to make and your family isn't on board, you got to really, really consider that, right? Reconsider it. But looked at it and like, okay, worst case scenario is, I don't know, bankruptcy. Well, people have survived that, right? Okay, well, I can go from there, right? But really what I often do, what I've grown to do, is since a fear of failure is creating a future trauma that has not happened yet, I might as well create future success and live in that reality. Because then the emotions that I'm working off of are positive and encouraging and hopeful. Again, neither failure nor success have happened. Neither one of them have happened yet. Which reality do I want plugging through my brain? Success. And that comes through training. It really does. Forgive the running analogy, but it's where I'm at. I'll share it. And I've talked about this before, but it's really helpful, so I repeat it over and over again. My favorite marathon is the Richmond Marathon. I've run marathons that are flatter and faster, and trail marathons and cold and hot. But this one is sort of my hometown marathon. I run it almost every year for my birthday. So I know the course amazingly well. I have run it, I don't know, 8 or 9 times. And I can almost look at every mile marker in my brain at this point in time. And so there's some really difficult portions of that marathon, running over the James River Bridge and hanging a left And so really, like, anywhere between, 15 and 16 to 20 is really difficult, because 20's got another bridge you run over. And so that's where you hit the wall and your glycogen levels are you're a mess, right? And so you got to walk through that. But I know around 22, 23, we hang right near the stadium. But I also know back at 7, I should be settling in the groove. I'm going to go through that one spot where there's a good crowd cheering for you. Then you get to run along the river. That's really peaceful. That's a time to kind of reset myself. And so what I do before the marathon is I sit quietly, no music, no nothing, and I imagine how I'm feeling on the starting line. I'm imagining everything there, the music in my ears, the temperature, the crowd. I know that first mile and a half, I think almost 2 miles, like it's like on Broad Street in Richmond, and people are cheering. And you make a big left, and then you got to get over to Monument Avenue. And I know that it's tight there. If you're not careful, you're going to bump into someone. And then as you start winding through the neighborhoods, it starts to thin out a little bit, and there's a little hill and hang right. But I know at that point in time, I'm soon to be going to this really great portion that I love that's downhill through the crowd I mentioned. You go over a bridge, you do a 180 and then a 45 degree, and then you're in that peaceful part by the river. And at that point in time, you're all thinned out. It's your race at that point in time. And then you got to go through a tough portion to get to the half marathon. And then at a half marathon, you get rejuvenated, right? It's been a hard portion of that, but you get a lot of energy from folks. Mile 14 is difficult, and then you're working way to James River. James River, you're going to hang that left. It's right there in VCU campus. Last year, I got a hug from Meredith. You got to wind a little bit. You got to go over that bridge by the Squirrels baseball stadium around mile 20 on Arthur Ashe Boulevard. If you can get over that and you feel good, you got a really chance to finish well. And when you hit point 2 with the left to go, it's all downhill. And so I will sit there and I will imagine each part of the marathon, and I will think through what I want to feel at that point in time. And I imagine success, not failure. I haven't created something out of nothing at that point in time, but my brain is thinking that it's going to be successful, and I'm living in those emotions. So that when I'm at those particular parts in the race, I'm re-experiencing what I've already talked about. I'm just reliving what's already. It's like it's a memory I'm living through. And I try to do that for as many scenarios as possible. I'm not perfect in it. I create future trauma and fear of failure. I do. But I try to think through it. Because again, guys, here's the thing. Some of you disagree with this approach, and I understand that. But the future hasn't happened yet. So at the moment, when you think about the future, you can either live in the future trauma of it going poorly, or you can live in the future success of it going well. And you're like, Gordon, what if it goes poorly? Okay, but I know in my present, I wasn't experiencing the anxiety. Maybe I get there and it goes horribly. But in my present now, as I think about it, I'm not experiencing that pain then. Why do I want to experience the pain twice? Why do I want to think it's going to go poorly and then have it go poorly? In the moment, I want to live in a moment of emotions where physiologically I'm doing well. And then I go experience it. Maybe it goes terrible. But at the moment, I'm not doing that. Why would I want to experience 2 poor scenarios? You're like, well, Gordon, if you think it's going to go well and it goes poorly, you're going to be disappointed. Maybe, but I know in my present, I'm not experiencing that failure or that trauma. So that's how I approach things. And when I'm coaching my clients, I walk them through that same thing. Live in future success and not in future trauma, because it hasn't happened yet. So what emotions are you going to plug in? And folks tell me, Gordon, I don't have that much control over my emotions and my thoughts. And I understand that. But I remind you, no matter what, your brain is a muscle just like any other muscle, and it requires training. And so this requires purposeful attempts. And as you walk through whatever you're walking through, my encouragement is just try to imagine future success, not future trauma. So what might happen is you experience success twice, or you experience success once. Yes, you might think it's going to go poorly and it goes great. Okay. But you may have added on the trauma of it going poorly for no reason. So friends, this is some of the encouragement we offer our clients in the Capitalize Your Best program. If you're ever interested, check it out. It's at capitalizeyourbest.com. What I'd love for you, no matter what, whether you ever visit my website or interact with me as a coach or not, what I would hope for you is that an approach like this would decrease the amount of trauma that you're putting yourself through. And so it's one of the ways in which I try to approach a healthy mental attitude in everything I do. I'm not perfect at it, but I do have some success in creating future success in my brain that I then walk through. And in those moments, I'm incredibly thankful. Even if I live in future success and then it doesn't go as well as I wanted, at least in that moment, I didn't put myself through any unnecessary trauma. So guys, I hope this is helpful. Another solo round coming up after this one. I believe I do have an interview scheduled. Thank you for everything so much for listening. Please like, share, let people know that you're checking this out. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in checking out the Capitalize Your Best program, then go to capitalizeyourbest.com or just reach out for me for details. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you as always, and we'll talk to you soon. See you guys.
How do you shorten the time it takes to buy a car? Car buying just got easier. Pohanka365.com lets you complete as much or as little of the car buying process online. Pohanka365.com. Car buying simplified. Anytime, anywhere.